She was born in a small Italian village, frail and unwanted by religious orders. Yet she crossed oceans, defied bishops, confronted prejudices, and built an empire of compassion. Her story is one of the greatest odysseys of faith in American history, even though America once doubted her, rejected her, and feared those she came to serve. Hello, dear friends in Christ. This is Jesus Lives, the channel where we meet the saints who prove again and again that Jesus is alive and performing miracles even today. If you enjoy the stories of great missionary saints, click subscribe right now, activate the bell, and share this video with your parish WhatsApp group or with your grandchildren. Because today we are going to meet a woman so small in stature, yet so gigantic in faith, the first American citizen saint, Saint Frances Xavier Cabrini, Mother Cabrini. Let us begin. The world did not open its doors for her. Convents turned her away, claiming she was too sick, too weak, too fragile to serve God. They advised her to choose an easier life, a safer path, a quieter existence. But weakness only sharpened her strength. Instead of stepping back, she stepped forward. She became a teacher, gentle, patient, determined. And soon after, she was placed in charge of an orphanage that had nearly collapsed under years of mismanagement. There, in that crumbling house, she learned 3 truths that would define her destiny. Faith demands courage. Mission demands strategy. And love demands sacrifice. In 1874, at only 24 years old, Francesca was sent by the Bishop of Lodi to a failing orphanage in Codogno. The institution had been run by a former religious superior who had lost her canonical license. The building was in chaos, debts piled high, girls undisciplined, funds nearly gone, authority broken. Francesca arrived with nothing but her rosary in hand. She calmly declared, "I will stay here 6 years to set everything in order." She never left. She reorganized the house, restored discipline, cleared its debts, and renewed its mission. From those cracked walls and bare rooms, she rebuilt hope brick by brick, life by life. In 1880, surrounded by 7 young women who wished to follow her path, she founded a new religious congregation, the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Yet even then, rejection still followed her. She had been refused entry twice. 2 separate congregations, 2 formal denials. One priest even said, "Little sister, look for something less demanding. Religious life is not for you." But Cabrini had already survived worse than words. At the orphanage known as the House of Providence, she had stood alone at the center of internal conflict, uncertainty, and leadership failure. She carried the institution on her back while the superior grew unstable, controlling, and unpredictable. That period, painful, humiliating, exhausting, was also the making of her. It taught her administration, discipline, negotiation, and leadership under fire. With only faith as capital and love as currency, she transformed disorder into mission. By her 30th year, she was no longer merely a teacher nor an administrator at a struggling orphanage. She was a foundress. She gathered women who desired more than the safety of cloistered walls, women who wanted to move, to act, to serve. Their mission would be education for the forgotten, shelter for the orphaned, evangelization for the abandoned, practical aid for the poor. The new congregation was born not in comfort, but in conflict, shadowed by debt, resisted by authorities, lacking resources at every turn. And yet it grew. Not because the world opened its doors, but because she kicked them open. Not because she was strong, but because she refused to accept that fragility meant failure. Saints are often forged where others break. And Mother Cabrini was forged in the fire of refusal, illness, criticism, and scarcity. A woman dismissed as weak who became the cornerstone of a mission that would one day stretch across nations. A few years passed. The orphanage in Codogno had been rebuilt. Her congregation had taken root, and the world had begun, finally, to take notice of the woman they once dismissed as too frail, too small, too sick to lead. But sainthood never settles. It expands. Word spread beyond Italy, first to bishops, then to Rome itself, that the mission in Codogno was no longer merely surviving, but transforming everything it touched. So she was summoned, not as a petitioner, but as a founder. In Rome, Mother Cabrini requested formal approval of her congregation, and with a trembling yet determined voice asked permission to go to China, the dream she had carried since childhood, the horizon she believed God had written into her heart. Pope Leo XIII listened, then changed the course of her life. Not to the east, Mother, but to the west. The Italians in America are losing their faith. Go to the United States. Help my children there. She did not argue. She did not protest. But fear settled into her bones. America was not the land of welcome she had heard sung in the ports of Europe. It was exile after exile. Filthy tenements, violent prejudice, and immigrants treated as less than human. She spoke almost no English. She had never crossed an ocean. She carried just $30 in her pocket, barely enough for one passage. Yet, obedience was stronger than fear. On a gray March morning, she boarded a ship with 6 sisters who carried more resolve than luggage. The journey was agony. Endless waves, sickness, cold, and sleeplessness. And then, New York. Not a hymn, not a welcome, not even a handshake. The archbishop who had promised support now offered only refusal. There is no house, no funding, no mission. Go back to Italy. She was pale, exhausted, still swaying with the rhythm of the sea, but her answer did not waver. Your Excellency, The Holy Father sent me here, and here I stay." That night they slept on the floor of a room in the dirtiest quarter of the city, hearing rats scrape the walls and children cough themselves to sleep. The next morning, she went out herself, street by street, door to door. Little Italy was a wound, crowded, starving, exploited, a community considered bad Catholics, unworthy of compassion, unworthy of care. But she saw what Christ sees, the abandoned. Within weeks, she opened an orphanage on 59th Street, a building she did not have the money to buy. When the banker laughed, she did not. The Sacred Heart will provide the house, and you will provide the mortgage. And somehow he did. Money arrived in envelopes with no names, pennies scraped together by dock workers who earned almost nothing. A single coin placed into her hand by a woman who whispered, "For the children, so they do not become what the streets want them to be." Miracle by miracle, coin by coin, she built not just a shelter, but a lifeline. A city healed is never just healed. It spreads. The success on 59th Street did not quiet New York. It ignited it. Suddenly, bishops wrote, immigrants prayed, politicians frowned, and newspapers began to speak the name, Mother Cabrini. But acclaim is a double-edged gospel. For every child she rescued, there was a cleric who doubted her, a banker who resented her success, a politician who hated seeing foreigners lifted from the gutter. She was not simply helping Italians. She was dignifying them. And dignity, in America at that time, was a currency reserved for the native-born. Yet, she did not slow. Chicago, then New Orleans, then Denver, then Los Angeles, then Seattle. Hospitals, schools, orphanages, brick after brick, city after city. Not charity, not pity, justice. In Chicago, she opened what no one dared attempt, the first pediatric hospital for Italian children, because disease was killing the young faster than poverty could starve them. Doctors warned her, "You have no funding, Mother. It cannot be done." She smiled the same way she had at the banker. "The Sacred Heart has never failed me. He is not about to begin." But America was not just a mission field, it was a battlefield. Irish clergy resented Italians filling pews they once claimed. Politicians saw immigrants as contaminants. Xenophobia wore vestments, and racism hid inside rosaries. Even within the church, voices muttered, "Foreigners, papists, unfit for citizenship." And so, they tried to keep her small, contained, grateful. But she had never been small. She spoke little English, but her silence converted more than sermons ever could. She walked into offices where she was not wanted, sat at tables where she was uninvited, and built hospitals in cities where she did not belong. By the time she turned 60, her pulse was weak, her lungs scarred, her body exhausted from oceans crossed and stairs climbed. But her mission was still accelerating. She founded 67 institutions, not for comfort, but for survival. Homes for the orphaned, beds for the sick, schools for the forgotten, food for the worker who labored until his bones bent. The United States did not want her, yet it would one day declare her the first American saint, a title earned not by birthplace, but by blood poured out in service. Irony has a habit of crowning the rejected. She arrived unwanted, foreign, dismissed. She died essential, claimed, celebrated. Statues would rise. Schools would take her name. Immigrants would whisper thanks at her tomb. And Americans, those who once feared the immigrant, would call her the patroness of their nation. Not because she looked American, but because she made America human. In her final years, Mother Cabrini moved slowly, but her mission did not. She continued traveling, founding, financing, negotiating, fighting bureaucracies, and rescuing those no one else would claim. By 1917, her heart was failing. The same heart that crossed oceans, argued with bishops, bargained with bankers, and sheltered thousands. On December 22nd of that year, in a small room in Chicago, after personally preparing Christmas candy bags for orphan children, she finally stopped. No illness had ever truly beaten her, but exhaustion did. The sisters found her seated, rosary still between her fingers, as if mid-prayer, mid-mission, mid-breath. The world rushed to name her gone, but her story refused to end. When her body was examined, her skin had not darkened, her features remained intact, and a sweet fragrance, reported by witnesses, filled the room. Not all saints are incorrupt, and not all incorrupt bodies lead to canonization, but hers became a sign, not of death withheld, but mission unfinished. By the early 1920s, when the name Mother Cabrini had already become synonymous with mercy among immigrants, reports of healings began to move beyond the walls of the hospitals she had founded. The first miracle formally recognized took place in a Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart hospital. A newborn, given no medical possibility of survival, was brought to the sisters in critical condition. All through the night the nuns prayed, touching the child's injured, failing body with a relic of Mother Cabrini and invoking her intercession. By dawn, what medicine had declared impossible stood before the astonished physicians. The child was healed, completely, painlessly, as if the suffering had never existed. The second miracle, recognized a few years later, involved a sister of Cabrini's own congregation. Gravely ill and believed to be near death, she received the prayers of her community, the invocation of Mother Cabrini, and the touch of her relic. Her recovery was immediate, total, unexplainable. Medical commissions examined every detail. Specialists submitted testimony, the Vatican studied every page, and no natural cause could be identified. Where science reached its limit, grace continued. With these two verified miracles, the process advanced, first to beatification, and then, on July 7, 1946, in St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Pius XII canonized Frances Xavier Cabrini. A woman rejected by convents, dismissed by bishops, and underestimated by nations, was now proclaimed a saint of the Universal Church. She became the first American citizen ever canonized, not by birth, but by blood poured out in service. Her feast is celebrated today on two distinct dates across two lands for one enduring legacy. November 13 in the United States and in the current Roman calendar. December 22nd in older traditions and select communities around the world. Two dates, two continents, one saint whose mission never stopped. Rome declared her a saint. America, once resistant to immigrants like her, claimed her as its own. She arrived unwanted. She died indispensable. She became the patroness not just of Italians, not merely of immigrants, but of every soul ever told, "You don't belong here." Her institutions stretched from New York to New Orleans, from Chicago to Los Angeles, from Denver to South America. She was not the saint of comfort. She was the saint of crossing borders, of stepping into the places where humanity breaks and rebuilding what the world had abandoned. Today, her name marks hospitals, schools, orphanages, shrines, and immigration ministries. But her true monument is invisible, a lineage of dignity born from a woman once considered too small, too fragile, too foreign to matter. She proved them wrong, not by force, but by fidelity, not by power, but by perseverance, and not by being welcomed, but by refusing to leave.